This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
U.S. President Joe Biden reverses America's withdrawal from the World Health Organization. UK bans passengers from Tanzania and the Democratic Republic of Congo to control the spread of the South African coronavirus variant. And Central African Republic declares a state of emergency to combat armed groups. Hello and welcome to you wherever you're joining us. This is Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up over the course of this hour. In business, Nigeria's public debt expected to rise this year amid a resurgence in COVID-19 cases, weak oil prices and OPEC production cuts. And in sports, organizers expecting 50,000 runners to take part in this year's London Marathon in October. U.S. President Joe Biden has stopped America's withdrawal from the WHO, which was started by Donald Trump in July last year. The World Health Organization celebrated the decision during its executive board meeting. Our correspondent Mia Alberti reports.
The WHO has welcomed the U.S. decision to remain in the organization. On Thursday, we heard from the Director General, Dr. Tedros, saying that these are good news for the WHO and global health.
WHO is a family of nations, and we are all glad that the United States is staying in the family.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, the U.S.'s top infectious disease expert, told the WHO that the U.S. will continue to fulfill its obligations in terms of personnel, but also in terms of financial aid. Let's remind ourselves that the U.S. is the top single contributor to the WHO. In 2019, it gave the organization $400 million. That's roughly 20% of WHO's total budget. So, of course, in this stage of the pandemic, this will be crucial for the organization, especially when it comes to helping lower-income countries. Dr. Fauci also announced that the U.S. will be joining the COVAX initiative, a global mechanism to develop and deliver the COVID-19 vaccine.
I am also pleased to announce today that the United States plans to work multilaterally to respond to and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. President Biden will issue a directive later today, which will include the intent of the United States to join COVAX and support the ACT Accelerator to advance multilateral efforts for COVID-19 vaccine, therapeutic, and diagnostic distribution, equitable access, and research and development.
Thursday marks a year since the first case of COVID-19 was reported in the U.S. And so by joining this COVAX initiative, U.S. President Joe Biden is showing that he is prioritizing the fight against the pandemic, both at home and abroad. Mia Alberti, CGTN, in Budapest.
Well, the U.S. President Joe Biden has also reversed various immigration policies, including the ones which restricted citizens of countries like Nigeria from relocating to the United States. Phil Ihaza now reports from Abuja.
President Biden signed an executive order on his first day in the White House, reversing the travel ban placed by his predecessor, Donald Trump. He has also directed the State Department to restart visa processing for individuals from the affected countries like Nigeria. About this time last year, former U.S. President Donald Trump banned Nigerians and people from 6 other countries from relocating to the U.S. Nigerians make up the largest population of Africans living in the United States, and many families who have not been able to reunite with loved ones have been hopeful that a Biden administration will reverse the trend. With the policy upturned, it could be a new dawn for thousands of Nigerian immigrants looking to relocate to the U.S. President Biden says immigrants have helped strengthen America's families, communities, businesses, and economy. Biden has also tasked members of his cabinet to develop ways to address any harm caused to those who were prevented from coming to the United States because of the ban. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris on their inauguration and says his administration is looking forward to strengthening existing cordial relationships between both countries. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Indeed, the new U.S. president has hit the ground running. As he signs various executive orders, African experts are looking to see how a Biden administration will impact U.S.-Africa relations. Astatal has more.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear that
around the world, people watched as Joe Biden was sworn in as the 46th U.S. president. West Africa was no exception, with experts predicting a shift in America's foreign policy.
With Donald Trump, it was America first. This has enabled him to achieve some good performances just for the United States, but this policy has had negative consequences on the United States' relations with the rest of the world.
The U.S. president, however, faces a number of domestic challenges, from tackling the rising number of COVID-19 cases to attempting to bolster a weakened economy. Biden has his hands full. While his executive orders on immigration are set to impact several African countries, it's not yet known how much of a priority Africa will be.
We expect Joe Biden to take some initiative. It's true that security and immigration issues are things that we expect Biden to address. But we don't expect much change from the Biden administration. If we think that with the arrival of Biden, Africa's relations with the United States are going to be a top priority, that would be a big mistake.
With 4 years left on Biden's first term as president, it remains to be seen just how Africa-U.S. relations will develop. Astatal, CGTN.
Well, as Joe Biden completes his first full day as U.S. president, allies and adversaries are hoping to reset their relationships with Washington after 4 turbulent years under the Trump administration. Giles Gibson reports from D.C.
When the U.S. Capitol was attacked by supporters of then U.S. President Donald Trump earlier this month, Western leaders issued a unified call for a peaceful transition of power.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
Now, with Joe Biden sworn in as the 46th President of the United States, world leaders are queuing up to congratulate him.
Obviously, it's the job of all UK Prime Ministers to have a very close relationship with the President of a close working relationship with the President, and a good working relationship with the President of the United States. And actually, when you look at the issues that unite me and Joe Biden, the UK and the United States right now, there's a fantastic joint common agenda.
Meanwhile, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel perhaps spoke for many world leaders who feuded with the Trump administration over the last 4 years.
There is simply far more scope for political agreement with President Biden. That is clear just looking at the executive orders he signed yesterday. We will once again work together in the WHO on the Paris Climate Accord, and on issues of migration we will likely have a more similar view.
President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, also said the EU is ready to reconnect with an old and trusted partner. Even US adversaries see this as a watershed moment. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani calling for the US to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal, which Biden has been cagey about so far.
Today the ball is in the court of the United States and Washington to return and fulfill its obligations. Trump's political career has ended, but the JCPOA is still alive. All of his efforts to destroy JCPOA were unsuccessful, and he failed.
By rejoining the Paris climate deal and the World Health Organization, the Biden administration has shown it wants to re-engage with the international community. But with the coronavirus pandemic forcing countries to restrict travel and compete for precious supplies of vaccines, President Biden finds a very different world from when he left the White House as vice president 4 years ago. Giles Gibson for CGTN in Washington.
Well, US President Biden has also launched his coronavirus plan. He signed 10 executive orders on his second day in office. This includes new rules on masks and quarantine for international travel. CGTN correspondent Sean Calebs now reports.
Today's Biden's first full day in office, and he was very busy, basically totally focused on the COVID-19 pandemic crisis in the United States. And members of his staff, his administration, saying that they're shocked how poorly set up the Trump administration was, that there was virtually no national plan whatsoever. They have no blueprint to work from. They say, the Biden administration says they're going to have to start from scratch. We can tell you that Dr. Fauci, we've all seen him talk about the pandemic during the Trump administration. He will remain with the Biden camp, and he is going to be the point person talking about this. This is going to be important. Biden today saying you will not see him or other political figures coming out talking about COVID-19. Only health officials, only science officials. It is going to be a dramatic change from what we saw from Donald Trump. So we also talked about measures that are going on. Anybody flying in internationally now must be quarantined in the United States. Masks are going to be mandated on all flights. All federal buildings, people must wear masks. So there is a great deal of effort going on, but clearly the United States is horribly behind on this. 400,000 deaths to date. Biden today said expect 500,000 by the end of February. He said, look, it is going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
And to some more news on the coronavirus pandemic further afield, Britain has imposed a travel ban on Tanzania and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The move is meant to curb the spread of the South African coronavirus variant. The ban took effect early morning Friday. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said British and Irish nationals returning home are exempted from the restriction. Tanzania and the DRC join a list of 11 more countries from where travelers are banned from entering the United Kingdom. The previous list consisted of southern African countries, including South Africa itself. This order comes at a time when a vaccine rollout is underway. The UK's chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, warns the vaccine being used is less effective against the South African variant. Scientists also say the South African variant is 50% more infectious than the British variant. Well, scientists all over the world have relied heavily on genome sequencing to identify and track the coronavirus from the start of the global pandemic in December 2019. South Africa is one of a few African countries able to employ this method to determine the virus's behavior and pattern of spread. It also has the highest number of COVID-19 cases on the continent. CGTN's Julie Shire now reports.
Scientists in South Africa have been studying the coronavirus since first being detected here last March. The KwaZulu-Natal Research, Innovation and Sequencing platform, CRISP, is at the forefront of this genetic surveillance.
We have a network of 5 big laboratories that do genomic sequencing in different parts of the country. And we're routinely sequencing some of the samples from the routine diagnostic swabs for the virus. And by doing that, we're kind of tracking how the virus spreads around the country, and also now, obviously, how it evolves with the changing nature of the epidemic.
Genome sequencing has been important in determining the country's COVID-19 response. Through this work, researchers tracked over 30 mutations and discovered the N501Y strain, driving South Africa's second wave.
It was through that kind of routine sequencing that we picked up this unusual variant and kind of flagged that the pattern of mutations in this variant was different to what we've been seeing with the other viruses circulating in the country. So when we saw that there were 7 or 8 mutations in the spike protein that were changing the protein, they were amino acid mutations, that made us concerned.
The new coronavirus strain has been relentless. Infection rates are at their highest. Deaths have accelerated. and hospitals have run out of beds for the sick. Numbers are starting to drop, leading scientists to believe the second wave is subsiding. The concern now is for other African countries without similar capabilities.
There is some capacity for this genomic sequencing in some countries within Africa, but it's relatively limited. And so it really needs a collaborative effort to make sure that we can support other countries in Africa to do the genomic sequencing and track the spread of this. We know already that this variant is in Zambia, it's in Botswana, it's been reported in Ghana.
Scientists warn of further mutations if vaccines are not rolled out, heightening the importance of continuing research.
We also want to make sure that our treatments and our vaccines and our diagnostics are still going to work too. And that's why we need to actually track these viruses. If it doesn't work, the vaccines work as well, perhaps a lower efficacy rate overall compared to what has been described so far, we may have to modify the vaccines.
Africa's anxiously awaiting the arrival of the first doses. Delays could compromise not just the continent's efforts, but the global fight too. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Stay with us here on Africa Live. Here's what's still to come. Central African Republic declares a state of emergency to combat armed groups. And in China, rescuers are racing against time to save 22 miners trapped under a gold mine 13 days ago.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Now, the Central African Republic has declared a state of emergency. The move aims to crack down on militiamen who have been launching attacks on civilians. Government spokesperson Albert Yaloke has said the state of emergency will quicken military action. He also added that the army will detain suspects, bypassing prosecution. The armed groups have been carrying out the attacks to protest against President Faustin Touadéra's win in the December 27th poll. Earlier, UN envoy Mankeur Ndiaye had requested the UN Security Council to increase the number of peacekeepers in the country. The increased insecurity has displaced about 60,000 people. Well, still in the Central African Republic, the UN peacekeeping mission has bid farewell to 2 slain soldiers. The 2 peacekeepers, one from Rwanda and the other from Burundi, were killed last week during attacks in Bangui and Grimari, respectively. The farewell ceremony was held at the peace mission's headquarters. Officials paid glowing tribute to the slain soldiers.
While the country is living a historic moment in its path towards stability and democracy, unfortunate circumstances bring us together on this day and reminds us of the dangers that we all face, and particularly our soldiers deployed on the ground in our endeavor to keep peace. They have fallen protecting the people of the Central African Republic. They have fallen delivering humanitarian aid throughout the country at all times and under all conditions. They have fallen for the implementation of the political agreement for peace and reconciliation, and they have fallen to enable the Central African people to take control of their destiny through the voice of the ballot in the exercise of their duties as citizens. Our valiant comrades have sacrificed their lives so that the Central African Republic may live and that others are not forced to pay such a price.
Now on to developing news from Iraq. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for a twin suicide bomb attack in central Baghdad. At least 32 people were killed and 110 were injured in the blasts on Thursday. The death toll is expected to rise, with several of the wounded in critical condition. The Iraqi military says 2 attackers detonated their explosive vests in a market. It is the first suicide bombing in the capital in 3 years. Moving on, rescuers in eastern China are still working to save 22 miners after an explosion trapped them underground 13 days ago. The location of 12 miners has been confirmed. Our reporter Huang Yue has the latest on the rescue operation there.
Rescuers are working on drill a total of 8 holes to search for and rescue the 22 trapped miners. The largest one has a diameter of about 711 millimeters. It will be used as a new rescue channel. The 12 of the 22 miners have been located. 11 of them are in the same tunnel and the other one is in the tunnel lower than theirs. But on Wednesday night, we learned that one of the 11 miners died after being in a coma for 2 days due to the severe head injuries. Miners have been taught by doctors on the surface how to deal with the body of the miner, and then they have relocated themselves to another point of the tunnel to avoid the leakage of the groundwater. These miners are now gradually returning to normal diet, so some of them have regained their strength, so they also helped with the search for the rest of people trapped underground. There were only 2 ways to extract the miners in the end of the day. One is through the returner shaft and the other is through the large drill hole. It's estimated that there are still about 17 tons of debris in the returner shaft, and it'll take about 15 days or even longer to clear up all this debris. And about the drill hole, the large drill hole, it has reached the depth of about 20 meters, but aims to reach the depth of about 580 meters. It'll take probably also about half a month to reach the tunnel where the 10 miners are trapped. In addition to guarantee their food supplies, rescuers also told us that a specific team of psychologists are now on the site providing counseling services.
Well, China and Nigeria are celebrating 50 years of diplomatic ties. Both countries marked the anniversary at a forum in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. The Chinese Cultural Center hosted the event, which highlighted the achievements made over the last half-century. This includes growing trade relations between both countries. China is among Nigeria's top trading partners. Nigeria also joined China's Belt and Road Initiative in 2018.
The next 50 years futuristic perspective of China-Nigeria cooperation is also going to hinge on the successful construction of the Belt and Road Initiative.
Well, in China, a new section of the Beijing-Harbin high-speed railway has finally been put into operation. The Beijing-Shenyang line was under construction for more than half a decade. It applies some of China's cutting-edge technological innovations to speed up travel between the Chinese capital and the country's northeast. Our reporter Guang Yang has more from Shenyang.
I'm at the Shenyang North Railway Station, where an opening ceremony for the new line was held this morning. Several Fuxing bullet trains have already departed from Harbin, Shenyang, and were heading to Beijing with a speed of 300 kilometers per hour as we speak. Now, as part of China's 4 verticals and 4 horizontals master railway network plan, the Beijing-Shenyang high-speed railway line is the last section completed along the Beijing-Harbin high-speed network. After being put into service, the quickest access by train from China's northeast to the capital city is now established. Considering the epidemic situation in Heilongjiang and Jilin province, railway authorities have reduced the number of high-speed trains between Harbin and Beijing from 26 sets to 15 sets on a daily basis. Also, local railway bureau in Shenyang has stepped up the cleaning of trains to keep passengers and employees safe with new cleaning protocols. Now, in fact, means that all high-speed trains undergo daily sanitation with touch surfaces wiped down and the entire carriages are being sprayed with disinfectant.
Well, let's now take a look at the Beijing starting point of the high-speed railway. CGTN's business correspondent Xia Cheng takes us inside the new transport hub in the capital.
This is the Beijing-Chaoyang high-speed railway station. It is connected with 2 subway lines. The high-speed train station is the first large-scale transportation hub of the 14th five-year plan. That's the entrance behind me. You can beep your card or ticket to get in. And above my head, Chaoyang train station. Of course, upstairs is the waiting hall for our passengers. As the largest station building in the Beijing-Shenyang section, Beijing-Chaoyang Station is one of the 4 stations in the capital city. It is a renovation project upon an older train station built in 1966. The construction started in January 2019. I really enjoy the abundance of natural light here on the 2nd floor where the waiting hall is. Because of the design of the ceiling here, very industrial and very futuristic, and it allows a lot of natural light to come into the 2nd floor. So you can see it's very bright and spacious. The whole area is about 183,000 square meters. The station can host as many as 5,000 people. The 3rd floor is going to be the food hall of the station. Just want to talk a little bit more about the Beijing-Shenyang high-speed railway because it's going to be a major section of the much longer Beijing-Harbin high-speed railway. And together, this is a modern high-speed railway transportation solution for northern China. The station has 7 platforms and 15 railway tracks. Here, you can start your journey into the vast northeast China, the former heavy industry center of the country that's developing winter sports and vacation for new growth opportunities. Once the Beijing-Shenyang high-speed train start operating, it will take you just 2 hours and 45 minutes from the capital city to Shenyang. The new high-speed railway network will attract more business travelers and holidaymakers to northeastern China, a region striving to shake up the stereotype as the Rust Belt of the country. Xia Cheng, CGTN Beijing.
Right, here's what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Nigeria's public debt expected to rise this year amid a resurgence in COVID-19 cases, weak oil prices and OPEC production cuts.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start the business in Nigeria, where the country's public debt is expected to rise this year as a resurgence in COVID-19 cases, weak oil prices and OPEC production cuts hamper its revenues. The West African nation's budget deficit spiked to $15.4 billion in 2020 as it reported a 27% revenue shortfall. Here is Kelechi Emekalam with more details from Abuja.
Nigeria's parliament recently approved the 2021 budget of $35.66 billion, its most ambitious yet. The budget is based on an oil price of $40 per barrel and a daily production of 1.86 million barrels. $20.26 billion is available to fund the budget, meaning that the country would have to borrow as much as $15.4 billion to fund its deficit. With the dwindling oil prices and economic disruptions caused by COVID-19, experts anticipated a worse scenario.
We expected 60% shortfall on revenue. So if they are able to do 70-something, it's great stuff, because we expected twice more drop than what was recorded. But having said that, we still finished the year spending more than what was budgeted. You notice that we spent 10 trillion, whereas we budgeted 9-point-something trillion. So how come? So it's a moving target. But what is actually very significant is that the underspend of about 1 trillion in the last year 2020 budget on capital is continuing in the first quarter of 2021, which is good news. And at the same time, the budget for this year, 2021, has a capital component of over 30%, which is also a record allocation.
Crude oil constitutes about 90% of Nigeria's export revenue, but price volatility has left the country struggling to finance its budgets. Government's looking to spend its way out of one of its worst recessions in decades.
Spending actually is one way out of recession, and of course, because the more you spend, the more you provide the basic things for government and for the people. But it should be such that instead of spending our way out of recession, all we need to do is to cut our expenditure and spend according to what we have. That way, we're not going to be borrowing a lot to take care of our basic needs.
The 2021 budget is expected to place Nigeria's economy on the path of recovery, growth and resilience. But that may be short-lived if government fails to diversify its economy and maximize possible revenue sources.
There is no state of this country today that does not have its own endowments, either in mineral resource or in tourism or in many other things. Many times some people will just talk about agriculture or mineral resources. No, but there are many other sources of revenue. I don't understand why we have not taken the mineral resources area very seriously in this country. And like I said, tourism is a major area. ICT is one area that we can even export, because the way Nigeria is just growing in ICT is such that we can actually generate a whole lot of revenue from that area.
As Nigeria enters another fiscal year, experts suggest that government builds a strong fiscal discipline, explore internal revenue generation sources, and block leakages and loopholes, measures that would help generate revenue and reduce the budget deficit. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Now, a shutdown of the mining industry in South Africa would be a last resort in the country's battle against COVID-19. That is, according to analysts and industry players. South Africa reintroduced stricter lockdown measures in December. Those rules were extended earlier this month to include the closure of land borders until February the 15th, except for cargo and emergency travel. CGTN's Angelo Coppola tells us more.
The latest lockdown hasn't affected the mining sector, and that's despite a big spike in infections and deaths in December and the early part of January. The sector has been actively managing the situation, and authorities appear comfortable with the actions taken.
I think it's highly unlikely that the government would shut down the mining sector.
And I just think it would be shooting from the hip. And I think the fact that the president has been hesitant to move us to a level 4 or level 5, but has rather chosen to stay with level 3 with slightly more stringent regulations and curfew says to us that, you know, they're not really keen to shut down the mining sector.
The mining sector contributes an estimated 7% to the country's GDP and employs 3% of the working population.
To shut it down in a time where already the economy is weak and a lot of people have lost their jobs would be tantamount to shooting an economic own goal, if one can say. And so if you look at the commodities that are important for South Africa, such as the PGMs, we're the biggest exporter of PGMs, and you look at other commodities that we mine, such as thermal coal, iron ore, manganese, and even gold. Commodity prices are currently at all-time highs, right? And so it doesn't make sense for us to shut down the economy when we could really use those export revenues and we could use those foreign currencies to come into the country.
In terms of managing and fighting the pandemic, the mining sector has led by example.
But I think what is interesting is last year, miners or employees would only get tested if they were showing symptoms of COVID. But now they're much more stringent about that. So every day, every shift, people are getting tested and they are making sure that there's protocols and controls in place to try and measure this thing.
The mining industry has shown even in high infection rates, it can operate and it can operate fairly safely because it takes a holistic approach. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And staying in the region, easing inflation in Zimbabwe is restoring consumer confidence and giving a boost to economic recovery measures. According to official figures, December inflation stood at 349%, capping months of steady decline from a high of 785% in May. From Harare, here is Farai Mwakutuya with the details.
Efforts by the Treasury to rein in inflation that had spiraled to a 10-year peak paid off in the latter part of 2020 as the rate of price increases retreated in successive months. Though it did not reach the targeted 300% by year end, it was still a boon for hard-hit shoppers.
That decline in inflation also tends to affect disposable incomes. So what they could buy in the beginning of 2020, in the second quarter and in the third quarter, obviously there is a huge difference because prices would have more or less stayed at the same level.
The gains were achieved by containing money supply growth.
The major driver of inflation in Zimbabwe in the past 3 years has largely been unabated money supply, which was beyond economic growth. Last year alone, money supply grew by over 103%, so that does push inflation. So now, most producers and retailers have been allowed to transact in foreign currency. So what it does is that it reduces demand for foreign currency on the parallel market, which was actually very key in pushing prices up.
However, the restoration of multi-currency regime had some unintended consequences, such as multi-tiered pricing. Shoppers here say because of the market distortions, the value of the local unit continues to be eroded, and that has diminished their buying power.
There has been an improvement for those who earn US dollars. But if you get paid in local currency, it's still difficult to make ends meet.
We hear that the local currency has gained against the US dollar, but it's all in theory. The reality is when you try and go and shop, you don't buy much because things are still going up.
Authorities will argue that the numbers show the increases are at a much slower pace than before, a trend they hope to maintain in 2021, where average annual inflation is projected at below 135%. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
China's shipbuilding industry has become the biggest in the world, surpassing industry leaders such as South Korea and Japan in 2020. The country's industry for ship repairs has also witnessed a sharp rise over the past year as the coronavirus upends global manufacturing and supply chains. Our reporter Li Jianhua has more.
This is one of the largest companies for ship repairs in all China. Despite headwinds from the coronavirus pandemic, the company's business is booming and staff are working around the clock as demand spikes. Over 90% of the orders of the company are from abroad. During the pandemic, stringent measures are taken to ensure safety. We boarded one of the ships under repair.
If we count as daily base, usually we repair. For our shipyard, we repair around every day around 20 to 30. Sometimes we also over 30 vessels in the same time in the shipyard.
Apart from conventional ships, the company has taken several orders to repair high-end liquefied natural gas vessels, and the pandemic forces pause in many other countries to shut down.
First one is the local government, including Shanghai Municipal, Chongming District, and the postal authorities like immigration, MSA, and the customer. They take many measures to help the shipyard. The second reason, I think we got the well preparations for the high-value ships, like the LNG carriers. We got the several LNG carriers, repair and conversion projects.
China's shipbuilding orders have exceeded those of South Korea, making it the world's largest shipbuilding country in 2020. Figures show China's three major indicators in the industry: completed ships, new orders and orders on hand are all in leading positions worldwide.
During the pandemic, some of the business transferred their orders from other countries to China, and including the shipbuilding and repair and maintenance industry. But if they have the low cost, if they have the competitiveness, if they have a better services, they can keep the customers. I'm sure about that.
This follows the trend of developed countries transferring their business to developing countries such as China due to environmental concerns. The business of shipbuilding and repairs is quite labor, capital and tech intensive. China has been a regional hub for about a decade now. Its biggest competitors are South Korea and Japan, though the country is still lagging behind in repairing high-end cruise ships. Li Jianhua, CGTN, Shanghai.
Well, thank you for staying with us on Africa Live. Don't go anywhere. There's plenty more still to come after this short break.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. We're back in East Africa, where historically snakes have thrived in Baringo County, deep in Kenya's Rift Valley region, because of the area's semi-arid conditions. The Baringo County government estimates that hundreds of people are bitten by snakes every month. Now, local experts are teaching residents how to keep the snakes at bay and what to do if bitten. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa now reports.
Residents of Kambi Samaki in Kenya's Rift Valley region start their days early. They are intent on completing their tasks before nightfall. When it gets dark, snakes crawl out from beneath the rocks where they hide until it is cool. In this village, everyone knows someone who has been bitten by a snake. Charles Kipyegon suffered a snake bite in 1996.
I was in my house, seated, and then I wanted to move a stone with my children. Then after doing this, moving that stone, then I was bitten, attacked by the snake.
Neighbors rushed him to hospital where doctors administered anti-venom treatment. He recovered, but still carries the scars.
My hand, sometimes when you want to touch, it is paralyzed.
The semi-arid environment of most parts of Baringo County makes this a favorable habitat for a number of snake species. The county government estimates that every month between 200 to 300 people suffer snake bites. A third die from the bites. Even when the victims survive, they are often disfigured.
The incidents of snake attacks mostly occur here during the night time. The snakes like to come into our houses.
At the local snake park, visitors can see indigenous snake species such as the rock python, the spitting cobra, puff adders and black mambas. The black mambas are among some of the most venomous snakes in the region. But the park does more than just satisfy visitors' curiosity. Officials often hold talks, advising community members on how to keep snakes away.
We advise people actually to clear the compound, to make sure that there's no hanging trees around, because particularly the tree climbers.
But residents have devised their own methods of coping. Charles believes the ants that mill around his home irritate the snakes.
Right now what we are telling our children is they have to, when they find rocks, possibly can be the home of, never put their fingers, never tamper. Some kind of flowers which produce a certain smell that snakes don't.
It isn't unusual to see water vessels such as this one on doorsteps in homesteads across Baringo County. A section of locals believe that this is one of the ways in which they can keep snakes out.
They have to ensure that also water throws are actually left outside the compound, so that if they come out at night to take water, they don't come into the room.
Some methods, like the ants and water troughs, are yet to be proven scientifically. Others, like clearing bushes, have proved effective in keeping snakes at bay. The government has also moved to stock local hospitals with anti-venom and to train health workers. And whenever they spot a snake, locals have learned to call the Kenya Wildlife Service to remove it. However, the rough terrain still poses a challenge to patients rushing to hospitals. Each precaution therefore counts as humans and snakes try to find room to coexist in this semi-arid land that is home to them both. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
It's just about time for the sports here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up. Organizers expecting 50,000 runners to take part in this year's London Marathon in October.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start with football. Morocco, Rwanda, Uganda and